Hello everyone, welcome to the Power of AI+I podcast, where we decide if AI is going to help I or not help I. We've got a really exciting discussion today as part of our Software and Society spin-off series called the Bergen Web. Hope everyone has had a lovely day out there and you're ready to get AI activated. So drum roll, we'll be talking about the EU Artificial Intelligence AI Act, prohibiting AI systems identifying or inferring emotions or intentions of natural persons on the basis of their biometric data in the workplace and education. So I'm going to explain what this means first. It's quite a mouthful, and I'm going to move on to the for and against arguments of this law, including a large integration of how the news relates to software and society. I'm going to finish off my own viewpoint. So first, let's break it down. What is biometric data? Biometric data refers to facial expressions, voice tones, and micro movements, detects emotions such as happiness, sadness, and anger. And what do AI systems identifying or inferring emotions or intentions of natural persons mean? Well, this is just AI systems trying to predict someone's intentions or emotions based on the data they have. I'm referring to these systems as emotion analysis systems, but obviously includes intentions as well. So what is the EU AI Act? The Act defined by the European Parliament website, the European Parliament being a directly elected legislative body of the European Union, is the world's first comprehensive AI law, designed to control the development and use of AI systems within countries in the EU. Quite interestingly, there are different rules for different risk levels of the AI system, a theme we've not seen yet in our Software and Society series. There are unaccessible risk AI systems, which are systems considered a threat, which include two systems related to our topic for today: biometric identification and categorization of people, and real-time and remote biometric identification systems, such as facial recognition. There's an interesting point here about exceptions that real-time remote biometric identification systems will be allowed in a limited number of serious cases, while post-remote biometric identification systems, where identification occurs after significant delay, will be allowed to prosecute serious crimes and only after court approval. Then there are AI systems classified as high risk, which these aren't related and we can ignore. So when was the law passed? Well, the law was proposed in April 2021, with the Parliament approving it in March 2024, and a majority of enforcement beginning in August 2026, so next year now. What are the penalties? Well, if a company doesn't comply, the penalties range from 1% to 7% of the company's global annual turnover, so companies will have to establish appropriate governance and monitoring measures to ensure that AI systems adhere to the Act. What other current laws are there? Well, another very common law is GDPR, which also strengthens regulations on data, and even more related with San Francisco banning the use of facial recognition in public spaces. The most similar case you may be familiar with is in China, where the facial recognition is developed so it understands emotions and thoughts in schools. And this topic brings me to do the research for good award this podcast, which is going to go to an interesting research paper which explored the students' actual risk perception and acceptance intention of this facial recognition technology in China, and I'm going to tag that in my resources down below. So what does this mean? Well, the direct consequences will there be increased personal privacy for members of workplaces and schools in the EU. Their emotions will not be analysed by AI systems and will lead to authenticity in the way they conduct themselves. With the law not passed and emotion analysis systems in full effect, individuals may internalise AI-determined emotional labels, causing disengagement or negative behaviours. The law puts a protection on human emotions and proves they should not be used as commodities or used as performance metrics. However, the indirect consequences are more complicated, and we'll discuss them if we try and understand this Act was a good law to pass, or if the power of AI being linked to I or not linked to I. So moving on to the core section of the episode, let's go through the positives of this Act first. Focus on why we think the EU's put it into place. The regulation isn't just about software, it's about how technology shapes our daily lives, workplaces and schools. As we can remember across all our case studies, relationships between software and society are highly complex. However, they are vital for us to understand what effects these laws and legislations will have on the world. So through the regulation of artificial intelligence, the EU may believe there will be better conditions for development and use of the technology. The Parliament state their priority is to make sure AI systems are safe, transparent, traceable, non-discriminatory and environmentally friendly. AI systems that infer emotional states may claim to enhance productivity or engagement, but the European Parliament has made it clear the potential for misuse like emotional surveillance or biased profiling outweighs the benefits. For example, an Uber Eats driver won a payout after facial recognition checks required to access his work app were seen to be racially discriminatory, creating unneeded complications for every party involved. And as we all know through this series, when software has a negative effect on society, there was a huge amount of backlash. Another consequence is that the regulation shows the EU actively trying to protect public interests, which will improve their political reputation and may lead to them having more allowance to pass other laws in other areas, another example being the Digital Services Act. So now moving on to the advantages of the law for the many, where organisations themselves within the EU will have improved ethical accountability. For example, in 2020, IBM withdrew from facial recognition, with the CEO saying that IBM firmly opposes the use of any facial recognition technology offered by other vendors for mass surveillance, racial profiling and violation of basic human rights and freedoms. And he says the time is now to begin a national dialogue on whether facial recognition should be employed by law agencies. Another advantage is other areas of the world may adopt stricter biometric and AI regulations to align with the EU standards. A similar example is when the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, got inspiration from GDPR by demonstrating the EU's regulatory influence. Perhaps the reason why this law was passed is because social media platforms like Facebook received such a backlash about how they influence people's lives, so the European Union actually prevented a future massive backlash of lots of big companies. Another reason why the law was passed, which could be a great help to the companies involved, is there might be fewer workplace discrimination cases. Now the biometric system laws are passed, for example, all the ones to do with Amazon, where productivity tracking tools were disproportionately targeted to certain workers. Another consequence is that this will cause an avoidance of social engineering tactics, for example, AI systems that may use insights from emotions and biometric data to push individuals to make decisions they wouldn't otherwise. This would be a prime example of dark patterns, something we've already noticed in the Bergen Web series, where software designs manipulate user behaviour through subtle clues. The law will also promote existing technologies for use biometric detection outside of schools and workplaces, for example, Apple's Face ID storage, which keeps biometric data on device, demonstrating privacy-first principles. Perhaps why no laws have been passed ready to restrict Face ID. Another reason why the law might have passed is because it will inspire AI research priorities towards more scientifically validated technologies, perhaps a focus on long-term research over short-term research. We need to have a think about these technologies before we dive into them. Another consequence is that organisations must disclose how AI systems interact with individuals, fostering transparency, which is what New York City currently has, which means employers who use AI have to tell candidates they are doing so and have to submit annual audits. Could the biometric recognition have taken away jobs from people who normally monitor emotions, such as security professionals or wellbeing staff? It could have, yeah. And an interesting article from The Guardian covers how the AI apocalypse could take away almost 8 million jobs, and I'll link in the bottom for you guys. In episode 5, if you remember the case study we found from KCL for a pedestrian detection system, detection accuracy was 7.5% more accurate for light-skinned pedestrians compared to darker-skinned counterparts. So could this act be stopping a potential disadvantage to people who have certain physical characteristics, meaning they cannot be identified by the AI? And perhaps the digital divide could have an effect on why the emotional recognition systems were banned as well. People who are less equipped to technology would perhaps understand less about the emotion recognition systems and be more scared of using them. Also, there's always a common theme of when AI has negative impacts, the impacts are most negative for demographic groups who are already disadvantaged or marginalised. The negative effects of the emotion analysis systems would link directly to the panopticon effect. If you're not familiar, it's a disciplinary concept in the form of a central observation tower placed within a circle of prison cells. The prisoners would always feel watched, introduced by the English philosopher Jeremy Bentham, who believed through constant surveillance all groups of society would be altered. However, this means employees are forced to exhibit emotional labour, conforming to happy behaviours rather than authentic ones, and this could affect certain people more than others. For example, people with neurological disorders who might find it harder to show emotion, leading to massive disadvantage if their disorders are not identified or taken into account. Bias in the actual emotional analysis could definitely occur as well. An issue we saw, we did our presentation on the effects of bias and digital divide, all the way on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out. And we also had a question time panel from experienced academic professionals from the University of Nottingham. Furthermore, you could say this emotion recognition system is a robot as well, with the definition of a robot being any automatically operated machine that can replace actions that humans would do. So it doesn't need to appear as a human or perform functions, but if the robot is given mechanical parts to walk around and speak and have a knowledge base, is this a potential rival to a teacher? Is this what we want in terms of innovation? And in the how do people feel about AI, a national study by the Alan Sherman and Ada Lovelace Institute, it was discovered 83% of people in the study had no experience of facial recognition for police technology. So because this, it could be that the tool, if implemented, would only benefit a small portion of people who already have experience, and the rest would be less confident with it and more scared, for example, children. Furthermore, perhaps biometric identification never exists in a healthy workplace culture, as it creates an animosity between the boss and employee, where the employee always feels watched. So perhaps there are some high-pressure environments where the emotion recognition would spur employees on to do better work and act more positively. For example, stockbrokers. And this counter example is going to lead me straight onto the against section of the podcast, why this law should not have passed. Here we go. So on the downside, companies which already invested in technology would have a waste of resources and potential animosity towards the European Union for this change, and may even leave the market. This shows a theme we've seen in software and society that massive legislative authorities have a huge amount of power for being able to accept or deny what software affects the lives of the majority. Another downside would be that innovation and motion detection AI might decrease and restrict companies from learning more, as it did for Clearview AI in 2020. Companies may also find a way of getting around the regulation by designing products for non-EU markets. However, this is going to lead to a development cost for them, not being a benefit for them. There's also an opportunity here to make a parallel between social media and the biometric AI systems, as it's easy to be anonymous on social media with anonymous accounts. It's also easier to be anonymous with this AI law, as there's less monitoring, which can lead to de-individuation, which means risky behaviours. You can probably see in the future potential legal battles over the AI definitions. Companies may challenge the definition of emotion detection AI in court to clarify legal boundaries. For example, the SYRI case in the Netherlands, which is one of the first cases where the world stopped the use of digital welfare technologies on human rights grounds. The Act is a prime example of a social technical system, a system that highlights the societal elements, human emotional expressions and body language, and combined with technical elements such as the biometric recognition software. However, has the Act optimised the social technical system? Could this be another example of the Horizon post office scandal? The European Parliament is a great example of a keystone organisation in the software ecosystem of the European Union as a legislative power. In episode 4, we did realise that predictions about the future technology are often wrong, so this could be the case here where the EU is predicting misuse of the technology. However, the technology might end up being used to be good. For example, one very useful use of technology is it could be used to detect emotion, see if people are lying, which is ever more important in a post-truth society. Perhaps the theory of technological determinism is taking place here, the theory that technology determines society. However, does this theory ignore different developments in different societies' culture? Could this be applying here? Would the Act have different effects across Europe? Perhaps poorer countries would not be as affected, however countries such as France and Germany would be. Perhaps the social shape of the technology theory is much more applicable here. The consequences of technological innovation are not monodirectional and not inevitable. However, instead they are shaped by social conditions. Another advantage of the system in place is because of the existence of the groupthink pattern, a pattern where thinking or decision making is made in groups. Groupthink might potentially be detected by emotion recognition, which could help to shut it down, as groupthink ultimately leads to poorer decisions. For example, an emotion analysis system could have identified groupthink for the CIO in the London Whale case. And on the topic of groupthink, I'm going to tag another article down below titled Why Cultures Fail, The Power and Risk of Groupthink by Yusuf A. Valine, which I found very interesting reading, so please see that. And in episode 6, we discussed healthy and unhealthy elements. What would you say emotion recognition systems are? Are they healthy? Are they unhealthy? Are they purely outcome orientated or people orientated? Or they could be aggressive systems as well. Something to think about. Quote tag. So we got a quote here. Values emerge from tools we build and how we choose to use them. Yet in most of the current practice in designing computer technology and the related infrastructure of cyberspace, little is said about values. And if you might not have guessed, that was Friedman in 1996. So this leads me on to a topic we covered in episode 7, which is value-centered design, a topic very related to this. Design always involves choices between options that harm people or benefit them, and perhaps the EU Parliament ignored the fact that by embedding ethical values like privacy and fairness into the motion analysis systems, through an iterative design process with conceptual, empirical and technical investigations, it can reduce risks. We can take the value-centered design card of the long-term health and well-being here as well, and perhaps think that emotion recognition systems will be very useful in the long run. The systems could also have been designed by Privacy-Led Design, a design framework recognised by the US Federal Trade Committee as one of the 3 recommended practices for protecting online privacy, and then coupling this with software quality assurance of the technologies, perhaps this ban wasn't needed, if there are more design principles held. I hope in your brain you've now had a little think about this legislation, have an idea of whether you support it yourself, and so this brings me on to my conclusion. I'm going to give you my exclusive view on this podcast. So overall I believe the EU AI Act rule on biometric identification is a good thing. It's very cautious, which is needed in this day and age of very powerful systems. I expect some of you are going to be quite surprised by that viewpoint, with normally my view being quite laissez-faire when it comes to AI. However, this is true, and some of the other laws in the Act I definitely do not agree with. However, I believe someone's emotions are some of the most personal information. I think the value of privacy is so hard to embed in the system that analyses one's emotions. I believe the values of quality and security of such a system directly oppose each other. So it's not possible to have a fully secure, high-quality emotion analysis AI system. This doesn't mean you cannot not have a non-AI emotion analysis system, leading me back to the point that the law which defines what an AI system is will be crucial here. Furthermore, I believe employees no longer being subjected to emotional conformity would reduce workplace stress levels, lead students feeling less pressure in their most vulnerable times of their life. You may say students and employees' emotions are still being analysed, but these are by humans, and I strongly believe at the moment humans are better at understanding emotions. Would you trust a robot over a human? A 25-year-old teacher would be brought up in training data from years and years of analysing human emotions in their lives, with constant validation testing against other humans seemed like quite a well-trained algorithm to me. However, if you were asked to trust a year-old baby to analyse emotions from biometric data in the workplace or schools, obviously I'd rather have a robot to do that than a baby. But as we realised in episode 3, the ability that social media has to manipulate emotions leads to dramatic consequences. So wouldn't have the opportunity to be able to analyse emotions at all time lead to potential immense psychological power over someone, especially with children in schools where there have been cases where teachers were not acting in the best interest of the students. I think in the workplace, the same point can apply, however, adults will be better equipped to report anything. However, this psychological manipulation could still be very easy to cover up and happen, especially with the power to analyse someone's constant reaction to it through the tool. Perhaps the people wouldn't even know that emotional analysis systems would be in place. I definitely believe there are cases where the emotion recognition systems work perfectly and give a lot of benefit to schools and workplaces. However, for the majority, this is a safe choice until we can fully trust the software and it's been proven better in testing. Perhaps China is more advanced than us in that regard to have the software implemented. This links to the globalisation theme we have found where different countries and territories have different priorities, and standardisation can risk not meeting local needs and preferences. However, in many other debates, I'm always a fan of giving full access to technology to promote innovation. And perhaps if the law isn't passed and there was a successful trial of these in workplaces and schools, it can lead to further innovation and then being deployed in self-driving cars and more robots, allowing them both to have better access to human emotion and be able to make better decisions. For example, a self-driving car could soothe the driver if they were stressed or advise them not to take the wheel. I also believe there's a general relationship between software and society, and the average opinion on it of negativity. People always quite distrust and not accepting the power and usefulness of society, which has a negative impact, I believe, as software is one of the most incredible tools we have. Perhaps with the population increasing and teachers having to teach even more pupils, an emotion recognition system could lead to not being able to only teach a class of 30, teaching a whole class of 100, because they can monitor more students using the emotion analysis to assist. You'll probably think this is completely dehumanising teaching, which is quite a sad thought, but perhaps this is an inevitable future. It would be better to have students being taught than not taught at all if there's still an increase in shortage of teachers. Also in Japan, there are already robots who look after you when you get old, and we trust them, so why would you not trust an emotion recognition system with no dangerous physical abilities? Is it because of the worry of the humans who use the information? However, overall, I stick to my guns that the law is a positive thing. Please let me know what you think in the comments. I'll make a prediction. I'm very confident that there'll be going to be recurring questions: what actually defines an AI system? Will this definition change over time? How clever is AI currently? Is it really a threat? Ultimately, in the world of complex technology everywhere, it's vital to have people who understand the social and the technical and how they fit together. So I hope this podcast has enlightened you, and I help you realise the power in AI and how AI can help society in these coming years. I want to say thanks to everyone for taking part in this spin-off series, The Bergen Web, with me. Next episode, we're going to be starting a new series, AI in the Military.